Welcome to another episode of Faster Fix. Today we're going to be taking a look at the classic Xbox One. This was released several years ago and Microsoft has stopped production on these units. So if you've got one laying around, you don't have the cash to go buy yourself a new one, and you're having some issues, especially game freezing up, locking up, system getting kind of hot and shutting off on you, an easy fix that a lot of people can do is simply to go ahead and replace the thermal compound on the CPU, GPU in there. So today we're going to go through this and I'm going to show you how to replace the thermal compound on an Xbox One. You'll notice our side panel. You need to get inside here and we're going to pop that loose today. So we're going to go ahead and get in, just kind of give it a little bit of force, and it should pop right out. We'll go ahead and set that aside. We don't want to lose it, of course. Once inside, we're going to have a little slider panel here. This little piece here is actually going to slide right off. So we're going to get that slides right out of place. Just a couple of little rails. Again, set it to the side, not to be lost or discarded. Now, we're making some progress. Next, we need to do the unthinkable. We have to break the warranty tag. Not like it's covered under warranty anyways. So let's go ahead and get that cut off and we will move on with this project. Get my handy dandy little poker here. And we're just gonna cut right through that. There we are. Not too shabby. All right, now that we've got that, the rest of this isn't really screwed into place for our top covering. What we want to do is go ahead and start prying this apart. Now, as you see here, it's going to hold pretty tight. We want to give this a nice little kind of a push and pull routine here, and this is going to let us separate that and get started. So you see we've got a nice separation here. We're just going to kind of work our way around. Now I like, in these little kits, they come with these little pry bars, so I'm just going to kind of take a pry bar here after we re-release that. We're just going to use it to kind of hold our place here. In fact, we're going to put it on this back side to give us a little more leverage. And then we're going to go ahead and start prying. I'm going to go ahead and come here, and then we're going to start coming this way. Come in here, make sure it's open. Come in here. We're just going to come on down. There we go. I'm going to pop all these clips open and try not to let it close. So I'm going to put my finger in here to keep that from happening again. Come on over. We're just going to continue until we're open. All right, so we are open, but you got to be very careful with this part because once you open up here, we've actually got a ribbon cable in here. We don't want to break that. So we're going to go ahead, pop our little clip here. Should have a bottom and a top. And on these, before you can pop it, you've got like a little bit of plastic loop to keep that from popping normally, to keep it secure during shipping. Less likely that they'll have any problems, so they don't have to pay for shipping to have these things fixed by just a simple cable. Now that that's disconnected, we can go ahead and remove that and set it to the side. Okay, now the fun part. So we're in the Xbox now. We're going to go ahead and we're going to need a Torx actually to get these out. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to start removing these screws here. Some of them are going to be a little tight, but they should come out. They're essentially just connected into the plastic. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and move on to our front plate here. So we're going to pull that back a little bit. This here, we're just going to give that a nice little tug, and that should pop out pretty easily. And this is just our speaker that makes noise when the console is turned on and off. There we are, so that comes out. Make sure you don't pull the wires directly. If you pull on those wires, there's a good chance you can actually rip it apart. These wires are pretty chintzy. Not that it's going to affect the audio out of a speaker like this, but just to keep it up and working, that's the best way to do it. Next, we're going to disconnect our Wi-Fi connection, which is right here. Just a little bit of a pry and it should pop right off. Oop, set that back over here because it's wanting to be in our way. Then we have a couple 3 screws here. We're going to take these off. So let's go ahead and get in here and get these off. So now we've got that. We've got a little small multi-pin down here, which is our connection into the rest of the console. So we're gonna have to take that off. I usually just pry my thumb back here a little bit and give that a little bit of motivation to come back out. Sometimes you can just give this a little bit of wiggle and it'll come right out, and sometimes you gotta fight with it a little bit. Today it came right on out. So this is our pen connector and it plugs right into this slot here. Again, set that aside, we don't want to lose it. So let's go ahead and take apart our connectors here. We're going to take off our Wi-Fi. We'll go ahead and disconnect our cable here first. I like to kind of pry from the back side, give just a little wiggle and it'll come right off. So we'll set that screw aside. And then we've got one more here. And this is plugged in with the same thing with that plug. So you're essentially going to grab the board, give just a kind of a little bit of a rock, and you're going to just kind of work it gently, and eventually this is going to come out. You just want to be careful with it. You don't want to put too much pressure. You can use these little pry bars here. They'll give us a little more leverage, and there we go. We've got it right on out. We can see what we've got there. Again, set that aside. And I did forget a screw. We can see I forgot it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my previous T10 torque. Now that I got my T10 torques, I can go ahead and remove that. And then that will release the rest of this from the plastic sheathing and allow us to get into the next step. There we go. We'll let that right on out of there. We're going to set this aside. Once you get inside, you want to be very careful about opening this. This is our connector for our Wi-Fi. We're going to come down here and very gently, again, always want to be gentle, and pull that out. Simply take this and set it aside as well. Be careful, some of these metal edges are quite sharp and can cut you very well. Now we can see inside here, we've got our Blu-ray optical disc drive. We've got our CPU and GPU cooler here. And then back here, we've got our 2.5 millimeter drive, or 2.5 inch drive. This particular model is the older style, so it's only 500 gigabytes. It's not the terabyte like the newer models have. There is some upgrade paths that you can do at this point as well. It is common for people to open it up, get down into here, and remove this drive and install as big as a 2 terabyte solid state drive, which does boost performance quite a bit. However, there's been some mixed results depending on the game that you launch. So it is a possible upgrade if you ever do want to replace that with something a little bit more expedient and larger as well. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with our journey here. We're going to continue by removing our hard drive. So again, we're going to kind of come down and we're grabbing the plastic. We're not grabbing the cables, we're grabbing the plastic. And you want to make sure we hold down our console. Just give it kind of a little bit of wiggle here. And with a couple little wiggles, it should pop right out. Then we're going to remove our SATA connector. This is our data. Perfect. Now this whole sled should just lift right out. We'll set that aside. Next, we're going to remove our optical drive. Same thing. We're going to go ahead and just wiggle our little cables here until it pops right out. You want to be careful not to put too much pressure because you can break this. And again, with power, we're pulling on the little piece of plastic. We're not pulling on the cable. And if we go ahead and turn this around to give you a better view here, we're going to be pulling on our power line here. And this should just lift out as well. And then we can set that aside. Now that we've got better access into our system, we can take a quick inspection to make sure that nothing is problematic. We want to just kind of make sure there's no capacitors that are popped or blown, or nothing that looks rusted, or any type of corrosion in here. And just kind of as a quick peek, it doesn't look too bad. All of our capacitors seem to be in good shape here. There's no leakage on the board. Everything is looking real good. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with this. Next, we're going to go ahead and take off these rail systems here. And what these are doing are holding the board itself in place. So we need to take those off. So coming back, they're pretty simple. You've actually got kind of a little crab claw. I like to hold it right here and then take my fingers and simply pinch right here. It pulls right out, and there we go. Pretty simple. We're going to repeat the process right there. And then our last one actually doesn't have the crab claws. This is held in by a screw. This should be that T9 Torx again. Now that we're off there, I'm going to set our screws aside again. There's nothing else really holding us in. We should be able to lift this straight out. What I like to do pre-game here is I like to come over here and I want to remove this fan power controller. Again, this one's a little more tricky because of the capacitor here, but generally if you can just get your finger and just rotate a little bit, and then you can rock it back and forth until it comes apart. Okay? Again, don't pull on the wires because we don't want to damage them. Next, while using the CPU, we can grab the entire board, lifting it out. But before we can do that, we have to come to the back side and we need to release our screws, holding it in place. Now we've got a few of them we want to make sure that we get out of here in special order. I like to go with our USB connector on the side, and then I'll make sure that our screws up here towards our power are released, and then I'll release our CPU. So let's get started. Now we're going to take apart our X clip. Now it actually has directions 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to follow this backwards. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So starting here at 4, we're going to remove that one first all the way because this uses Microsoft's X-Clip technology. It sounds pretty fancy, but it's essentially just a big cross member that's bent a specific way so that it holds everything equally in pressure. And for you guys, we're going to do a little bit of TV magic, and this will be over in a blink of an eye. Alright, now that that's done, we should be able to lift our console straight up now. And be careful with it, you want this to come out. Got this little pin, you can push that down just to give yourself a little advantage. And then you've got a pin over here you can push as well. And then that should just completely release, just like that. You'll notice nothing is left in the pin. And now we have our fabled X-Clip. This is what I was telling you. These are all bent on a central axis, and it gives Microsoft their ump as far as their X-Clip goes because it gives you the proper torque every time. In order to release these, it's pretty simple but can be kind of a pain in the rear. What you want to do, I find it's easiest for me to use a flathead screwdriver, and with that flathead screwdriver, you want to kind of work your side in just a little bit. You don't want to hit the board because if we scratch the board, we can actually damage it. We don't want to do that. So we're going to go ahead and give this just a little bit of help and give it a little twist, and it should, ideally should, pop open. Generally, once you get the first one, the rest of them are pretty simple to come. There we are. So we got the first one. Now we should be able to come over here and grab the second, and then third, and then fourth, and then we're done. So we'll give that a little bit of a twist. Want to make sure the board stays kind of flat. There we go. And now we've got our handy dandy clip. Now don't do what I did and scratch the board with this because that's a terrible idea. You don't want to do that. But upon inspection, it looks like we're fine. We didn't actually damage anything, so we're good to keep going. So I like to go ahead and just give it a straight lift, and that makes sure that we get our board evenly off. And we can see that our old thermal compound is here. This is dry and calcified. It's not moving. It's not running. This is definitely not a happy CPU compound. So right now we've actually got our Xbox completely disassembled. And now looking at the board, we can take a quick gander here. Now something else to be aware, we do have our good old electrostatic shocking absorbing bracelets. We actually have one on my ankle right now. I always recommend that you wear one, because when you're dealing with this, you don't want to blow up something and then all this was for nothing. So we can take a look here. This is our CPU GPU combo, our capacitors, our RAM. This is all in pretty good shape here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to clean it up real good. We're going to come back, we're going to re-thermal paste it, and then we're going to reassemble. Now for what we're doing next, we're going to go ahead and clean this. I like to use just a standard alcohol, and 70% percent is okay. I personally prefer 90% or better. And then just a simple paper towel or a blue paper towel, something like that, so that'll clean it up pretty good. You don't want to use anything that can contain static, so nothing straight out of the dryer. So let's go ahead and get started on this. And here you can see we've got our cooler. We've got a simple air chuck here. We're going to be using this to blow this out. You want to be very careful. I usually like to put my finger on the fan here. That'll keep it from spinning and burning out our bearing. If we burn out the bearing, we're going to need a new fan. So let's go ahead and do this. Give this a nice little couple of squirts. You can see we've already made some difference here. Okay. And I like to get the top side. We're going to spray the fan itself. One last spin test. Beautiful. It's exactly what we want. Give this one last cross blow. We're good to go. Next, we're going to go ahead and clean our board. I'm going to be careful with the VRM. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hold on to the board here. We're just going to give it a quick little spritzing. You can also use canned air as well. But since I have an air compressor, this is what I'm using. And again, be careful. Don't go full blast spraying. Just very air spots. We're just wanting to clean this up. Get inside of backside. Always cleaner. Looks like our chips are doing good. They look good. We even have our quality control mark here. So beautiful. That's exactly what we want to see. All right. So moving forward here, we're now back from cleaning up the components and blowing off all the dust and dirt. You can clearly see that we're much cleaner than we were. However, we still have quite a bit of thermal compound we got to get cleaned off. So we're going to go ahead and move on here to the cleaning and getting that taken care of. We're going to want to clean the thermal compound off of our CPU GPU combo here, as well as our heat sink over here. That way we have a good clean path on both of them. So as I said before, we're going to go ahead and just use some common rubbing alcohol. This is 91%. This is what I prefer. 70%, 71%. That will work as well. There's also compound cleaners you can get from different companies such as Arctic Silver. They make different compounds that will clean this pretty easily. This is our thermal paste here. Again, not sponsored. This is MX4 by Arctic. This is just a good common paste that works really well. Okay, so we've got a little bit of alcohol here, and I like to just kind of give it a little bit of a dab. What we're doing is we're hoping to eat into that compound just a little bit. It's not going to be perfect, and then once we do that, give it a nice little swipe. Now it's not going to come off immediately and perfectly, but it will come off little by little. So if we take a look here, you can clearly see that we've already made progress. This is not something that you want to rush. This is something that you want to make sure you get as much off as possible, because the cleaner this is, the better the heat, the thermal transfer is going to be to get out of the system, so that it's no longer slowing you down. I'm going to go ahead and clean around here. I like to kind of clean around my little port or little hole area here. Now, something else that's kind of handy. This is a nice little plastic piece here. We can actually kind of come in just a little bit, and with just a little bit of pressure, we can come by and we can clean up real nice and deep in here and actually knock chunks of that old calcified thermal compound out of there. And come over here so you can get a little better shot of that. And we're just going to come through there, and you can see we're just breaking apart that old thermal compound, and it's just leaving chunks everywhere. Now we're going to move on to our heat sink, and we're going to get that cleaned up. So we're going to go ahead and set this out of the way. While that's over there, now we're going to go ahead and work on our heat sink here. Now what some people do on these thermal pieces is they just wipe them off, or you can do a little bit of pre-scraping. You actually have a nice, pretty smooth surface here. So if we take this, you hold it nice and steady, and just set it nice and flat, you can actually press and slide, and it makes a nice little scraper. And what that's going to do, it's going to remove the majority of our compound, making cleanup in the end a little bit easier. Now it does have a little bit of a lip here, so you're going to have to kind of climb over that lip and then scrape off. Kind of come around over here. I'll come to the other side of our lip. There we go. Kind of get in between there. We'll move this way, that way. And we'll go ahead and just kind of dump that out here so you can see all that came off. That actually saved us quite a bit of work right there. And we can come by and get this a little bit here as well. We kind of want to try to keep this out of the fins. We don't want it dropping down into the console later. So don't just go hog wild with this and start scraping like a maniac. Try to kind of keep it at an angle so that it's not going to fall into the fins. Alright, now we can take our alcohol and do a nice clean job on this. So we'll go ahead and just brush that out of the way for right now. Putting that back into their frame. Let's go ahead and clean this up now and make it look halfway presentable, shall we? So anyways, give this just a nice good little rub down. It's going to clean up pretty good for the most part. Go ahead and flip over to the other side here. We're just going to give it a nice little scrub. And we just want to get all that thermal compound off. And that's going to make for a real good, smooth surface so it maximizes our heat transfer. Alright. Okay, so that is not too shabby. It does look a little dirty, but it is actually clean. So let's come on over here. Let's grab our board back. And then we're going to go ahead and crack open our thermal compound. Like I said, I'm using the Arctic MX4. You can find this yourselves on Amazon, eBay. Just search around the internet and I'm sure you're going to find it. And I'm also going to be using our paddle they include. Now you don't normally have to. Generally the pressure alone is more than enough. But I'm going to go ahead and use this so that we have a nice little even spread layer. And it just gives me a little more peace of mind knowing that every corner of this is going to be covered without having to put excess compound on here. So we're going to come over here. Then we're going to go ahead and then give ourselves just kind of a nice little blob here. Doesn't have to be huge. Some people say you need the size of a pea. I use generally about half of that. And then if I need more, I can always add more. It's a whole lot harder to put the compound back in the tube once it's out. So then we're going to take our little spatula here and we're going to give this kind of a nice little, spatula. We're going to spread this around as even as we can. And we just want to go all over. This is a real big chip, but generally speaking, the amount of compound that you have will cover what you want. The more compound you have on here doesn't necessarily mean better thermals. You can actually get too much and cause an insulation effect. However, you would require a whole awful lot of compound to do that. So in this case, we're really doing it to prevent waste and to just ensure that we get good even spread coverage so that we have a nice covered GPU here. So we're just about there. Okay. I like to give this kind of a nice once over here, make sure everything's nice and neat. And then, now that that's done, I'll usually take the excess that I have over here and I'll just give it a nice little smearing here. And then that'll just give it a little extra in case it's a little thin. And that's it. Clean off our spatula, put away our tube, and we're ready to start putting this back together. So moving forward, we're going to go ahead and start just like we did taking it apart, only in reverse. We're going to go ahead and put on our heat sink, put on our X-clip, screw this back into the casing, and work our way back. Now, you want to make sure that you put this in the correct orientation. This has your plug here, And you need to make sure this is going to link up to your plug here. It's a standard 4-pin. So what I like to do is give this a nice little tilt here, and then I'll put in my pins and then slide it into place. I'll turn the board upside down, and then it should just kind of sit in place. That's what we want. Now if we let go, it's gonna move around, and you know, a lot of people will tell you that, oh, if you let it move around, you're gonna lose your thermal cooling, etc., and that's just wrong. So we're gonna kind of set this here. Oh, there we are. And what's kind of cool with this, we should be able to just use our thumbs now and press this into place. One. Oh man. Oh, okay, maybe our hand. Oh, you know why? Because we're too far in here. We actually need to pop that back out a little bit into the next clip. And now we should orientate better. We should be able to just press it in. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh. Uh-oh. We're not wanting to grab our final clip here. Oh, that's why. That one's the same problem. It's a little too far in, so we're just gonna give it a little bit of love to push it out. There we are. Okay, so we are now nice and firmly seated. This should hold quite nicely from here on. Now we've got our mount. I like to go ahead and just plug this in now so I don't forget later, because I frankly am a very forgetful person. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and line up. We've got our front I/O and our rear I/O. We want to make sure our rear I/O lines up with the back. Pretty hard to mess that up, but you know what? I know there are others out there like me. Okay, so now that's apart or back together. I like to start where we left off and start putting in. Now we've got a couple of pins. I like to make sure those are seated nice and neatly inside. And then we're going to start putting our screws back in. We're going to come right onto here. Now I'm not going to put these in the exact order at first. All I'm doing is getting these in and lined up. That's what's important right now. And you'll notice I'm not screwing all the way down at the moment. Again, that's because we will be putting these back in order of how they need to be screwed in according to what's on our unit. Okay, we've got all of our screws started. So now we're going to start with a 1, and 2, 3, and 4. And again, thanks to the magic of editing, you guys will be done right now. Okay, so we're nice and set. Now we're going to move on and put in our other screws that we've taken out earlier. All right. So now that we've gotten all of our screws put back into place, we can go ahead and flip this back over, and we can start our reassembly process. So from here, we're going to go ahead and put this back into the plastic tray. I know it's not quite exactly reversed on how we took it apart, but I promise it will make sense. So we'll set this into place, and it's going to just sit nice and snug in there. It's not going to move around. If you get any little pops or clicks while you give it a little snug, then you're not quite right, and move around with it until it sits into place properly. Then we're going to go ahead and put in our other drive pieces and our board holders for our front and our side. So let's go ahead and start with our front and side here. I'm going to start with our side actually. I'm going to set that right there. And we're going to put in our handy dandy little screw. So let's go ahead and get our handy dandy little grab clips here, I like to call them. I don't know what they're actually called. Something I should probably look up at some point. Okay, so we've got those installed now. Now we're going to go ahead and start installing our device drives again. So we're going to go ahead and start here with our optical drive. This is going to slide in nice and easily. You want to just kind of right here in the middle, and it will kind of try to grab the tape if you're not careful, but generally speaking, if you just watch what you're doing, it'll sit nice and easy. Then we're going to go ahead and plug in our power and our data. Should just go straight on in. Very minimal resistance. Goes right on in. Then we're going to go ahead and put in our mechanical hard drive. It's going to go back into place. That goes in. Go ahead and plug in our power. And again, our data now. Now we're starting to look more like an Xbox again. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and grab our top cover and we're going to put that back on. So this can really only go on one way. We want to make sure that we come in at our angle here and plug this in. We don't want this to be left undone, otherwise your console won't have Wi-Fi. I don't know how many of you are actually playing with Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is handy, especially if you're going to friends' houses and playing on their network, and you don't have to be dragging cables and trying to plug stuff in. You can just get down, connect to Wi-Fi, and start having fun. We're going to go ahead and reinstall this faceplate. This is a lot easier to do when there's no screws. So I'm going to go ahead and lift that just nice and gingerly. And we're going to press that in nice and evenly. There we go. Make sure we're nice and snug, we're not moving around. Now we're going to start putting in some of these larger screws. And this is going to help us hold things in place when we start putting this back together for good. Next, let's go ahead and plug in our cables here. Here's our speaker. We can also plug our Wi-Fi in, but we're going to go ahead and put our screws in first, which I should have done before plugging in my Wi-Fi cable. But honestly, it's not going to make that big of a difference. Put all three of our screws in place. That's going to hold this nice and tight. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and plug in our Wi-Fi here. Just want to be very careful. Line this up nice and easy. And then it should just kind of clip into place. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and install our Wi-Fi chip here. Make sure our Wi-Fi cable is not in the way. We don't want that getting stuck underneath of there. Nice firm press here. Clips right into place. Then we're going to put our couple of screws in, holding that Wi-Fi card in place. All right. Put that on there, nice and easy, nice little clip. All right, that's now in place. Now comes the fun part. This is actually kind of more irritating, but it's not very hard. Inside, you're going to find we've got mini clips. We've got to come in, we've got to start kind of popping these clips to open this so that this can fold down. And you can hear my clips are already starting to clip back into place here. So if we can get and hold a little bit of pressure, it makes life a little better. Just kind of move down the rail. We're just going to keep on trucking. Keep that pressure on. We don't want it to snap back into place because, frankly, Microsoft, when they designed this, that's what they wanted, is for it to snap in place so that, well, essentially it fixed itself. So now we're going to come back, and of course this is going to sit like this. We're going to go ahead and take our strip here. Now you got to be very careful. This is very delicate, and if you rip this, you're sunk. You're going to have to order a new cable. Make sure we're posted out so that we can slide our ribbon cable into place. Fold this back towards yourself. And then we're just going to take it and slide it into place. And then you should be able to close it up. There. And now it's connected. And now that that's connected and in place, we can take this and slide this up. And that's going to put this into position. And now we can install our top. Now our top is just going to kind of come over here. It's got to slide over all of these clips. There we go. Like that. There. Now everything's nice and lined up. You'll notice that our corners are nice and even here. And for the most part, this will probably close up are all the way on its own. Now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our piece of plastic over here. So we're going to go ahead and grab that. Let's go ahead and lift up our console. We're going to take this, I'm going to slide it into place. Slides right into place like that. We're going to take our external grill here, and then we're going to put that right back into place. That's going to clip in. And that's that. You have now successfully rethermaled your Xbox One. You are adding a couple years of life to this, and you'll still be able to play some of your old Xbox games later on this reliable console now that it's cleaned up. Other than that, I do want to thank you very much for watching this video of Faster Fix. We will see you on the next one.